everybody, Questwise here, and today's kind of a special video because this is a video that was requested that I talk about by one of the members over at the Pulp Alley Players page on Facebook. I had mentioned in my previous video about what is pulp, and I guess at one point during the video I had mentioned using superheroes in Pulp Alley, and this member of the group asked if I would maybe expound upon the idea of using superheroes in Pulp Alley and how I go about doing it. Now, as sort of just a precursor to getting into how I build and use superheroes in Pulp Alley, I have to note that Pulp Alley is a game of... And I talked about this in a previous video, that the pulp itself is pulse pounding, character forward, fists flying kind of action. Pulp Alley is not a game of sort of world ending massive threat, like Avenger level kind of fights. So while you could do, Superman, or you could do Iron Man, maybe not so much Iron Man, but things like Superman and some of the more powerful heroes, the Hulk, that kind of stuff, or even if you're going to go more powerful villains like Galactus, or like these sort of cosmic level, or in Marvel they call them Omega level threats. It's possible to do them, but you have to understand that you would be using the epic rules. Now, the epic rules in the rule book state that they should generally be used for big bad villains. Now, I've used them in my games to run heroes, but you have to understand that Pulp Alley, and there's a variety of ways you can run Pulp Alley, but a lot of the times when you're running a scenario, it's dependent upon sort of plot points, right? Getting to these areas on the map and solving these plot points or capturing these plot points. When you have one hero on your league, if you're going to run an epic hero, where the problem starts to sort of set in, and it's not a problem with the rules so much as it's a problem of not having enough characters to sort of interact with the plot points on the table in a timely manner. Now, you can, like I said, Pulp Alley is such a versatile, such a sort of open way to play skirmish war games. You could set it up as being sort of no time limit or no turn limit in your scenarios, and you can create scenarios to sort of fit the game that you want to play. That being said, a lot of the scenarios that are sort of pre-generated, the basic scenarios in the rule book, a lot of the scenarios from the scenarios book all have turn limits. So I think you're going to find it very difficult to run an epic level hero, just having one character on your team, and being able to accomplish the goals as they're set in the sort of pre-written scenarios in the book. Now, like I said, you can do away with those turn limits. I've done that many times. I've run games where I just want to explore the map. I just want to explore the setting and the characters a bit. So I get rid of the idea of having a turn limit, and I simply go at it and I simply play. I did post on the Pulp Alley Players page a couple days ago that I had run a Hellboy game in which the only character I used was Hellboy. I just figured out I just had painted up, which got a ton of likes. Thank you so much for everybody who liked my post on the painting of Hellboy. Great figure, by the way. Anyhow, so I ran a scenario where he was simply just him exploring a sort of a garden of the gods. I took one of the scenarios from the book. I think it was the Lost Key scenario, and I simply made it so that it was no turn limit, and that I had to investigate 2 different plot points in order to unlock the so that I could interact with the major plot point. By doing that, what it let me do is it let me sort of explore the table a little bit. Let me move around and goof around and play with different concepts. There was a river down the center of the board, which was difficult terrain. And so, I had these zombies sort of randomly popping up. At the end of every turn, I would flip a fortune card, and if the flame symbol, a story icon popped up, I would add that many zombies, X number of zombies, to the table. And so it gave me a chance to sort of explore movement around a table where there was difficult and perilous terrain. It'll let me sort of play with some of the story icons on the cards and stuff as well. But it is possible. Now, one of the things that I've done in the past is I created for my own use, basically, a way to run an epic hero, a hero that's just when you're creating it or when you're trying to emulate it from a different source, is not Superman level of power, but is a little bit should feel a little bit more powerful than your average sort of just leader character. So what I did is I took the epic rules in the core rulebook, and I did something where I call it a minor epic hero. What it is basically, normally when you're creating an epic hero, an epic character, you get to choose a bunch of abilities beyond what like a normal character would have, like even a normal leader. So when you're creating a normal leader in a league, you get to choose 3 abilities between levels 1 and 4. With an epic character, you get 3 abilities, one of which can be from the epic list, and then you can fill out the rest of your roster, because you can't have any other characters if you're making just a general epic hero. You would fill out the rest of your roster with abilities and perks and that kind of stuff. So what I did with this is to try to balance it a bit, and it seems to work pretty well so far, is that with a minor epic character, instead of being able to choose like 8 different abilities, you're only able to choose 5. So you get your normal 3, one of which can be from the epic list, and then you get 2 more. But where that sort of balance comes in is that if you're going to add characters to a league, if this is going to be the leader of your league, instead of having 10 slots available to you, you only get 8. So you're losing a little bit of extra characters to make up for the fact that your leader now has extra abilities. That's kind of how I play out sort of a hero, superhero character, somebody who should have a little bit more oomph than a normal leader. Now, let's talk about normal superheroes in a game of Pulp Alley. What you're going to need to do, you don't need to do, I keep saying need, but what you're going to do is lean really into the perks section of the rule book, okay? So for instance, just let's do Batman, and we're going to do Robin, okay? 2 superheroes. Batman's going to be your leader. Robin's going to be your sidekick. So you can build them just directly from there. Simply just add those 2 characters, stat them out as you normally would. Then you're going to take the perk in the main rule book that's called Duo. Now, perks are a lot of things, and I'm not worldly enough to say that most people don't lean into perks quite this heavily, but I have a lot more. Normally when you're building a league, you just create your league, you use the abilities from the ability list, and you're ready to go. One of the things that took me a long time to sort of lean into and something that took me a long time to sort of grasp and sort of add to my games was the perks abilities, right? So perks are things that you can add. They have point cost that you can add to your league, but they don't generally add any characters to your league. They'll just add special abilities to either the entire league or give you some bonuses to add things to the league. So when you're doing Batman and Robin, you're gonna pick the Duo perk. It costs 4. Costs 4 of your slots for your roster. But it says that your sidekick starts with 1 additional ability, so they're now gonna go from 2 abilities from level 1 to 3 to having 3 abilities from 1 to 3. and you're going to raise their health to a D10. So they're basically becoming like a second leader character in your league. Your league can only include one leader, one sidekick, perks, and associates, which means you have no other characters on the table except for Batman and Robin, just your leader and your sidekick. This roster can never include any level 1 or level 2 characters, and the cost of this perk does not include the sidekick. So while it costs 4 of your roster slots, you're also going to add in the 3 from your sidekick. So your leader's always free, right? But he counts as a level 4 character. But your leader's always free. So you're going to pay 4 for the perk, and you're going to pay 3 for your sidekick. So now you're already at 7 of your 10 roster slots. What you can use those last 3 on are other perks, or you can add associates. So in the past, what I've done is I've added an associate and said that it was Oracle, right? So if you know anything about the Batman mythology, Oracle is this woman who's she's in a wheelchair. If I remember correctly, she used to be Batgirl and was pretty severely beaten up. Lost the ability to walk. So now she's in a wheelchair and she sits back in a sort of secure location, and she's able to look via the internet, via the web. She's able to access police records and street cams and all sorts of stuff. And she's basically there, sort of a background character that Batman can sort of tap into when he needs to find out, get information. So I've done that in the past. I've also added some other perks that allow Batman to have some more gadgets. So I'll start to use more of the gadgets and gear side of things. Usually I give him a utility belt because it's Batman, right? It's well known that he has a utility belt. So you can use those last few roster slots to pick other perks as well as associates. And that's one way that you can do superheroes. Now, like I said, it's going to be more of a sort of street level type superheroes. So think of things like Batman, Spider-Man, Daredevil, Black Widow, Hawkeye, those kinds of levels of superhero characters. Another one that I'm doing actually this May, Memorial Day weekend at a local convention, is I'm going to use Pulp Alley to run Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Okay, so how I'm doing that is, again, leaning into the perks section of the main rulebook, and I'm using a perk called League of Legends. It costs 10 slots for your roster. So it's going to use every single slot in your roster. But it reads, your league includes 4 sidekicks included in the cost of this perk. So it's 4 sidekicks for 10 roster slots, but does not include a leader level character. Instead, select one of the sidekicks to fill the role of the leader for the scenarios. So you're going to go from, say, a normal roster might have a leader, a sidekick, a couple of allies, and then a couple of follower characters. In this instance, by using the League of Legends perk, I'm going to have 4 characters. So I'm going to have the 4 Ninja Turtles, and they're all going to be sidekick level characters. And I can create them based upon what I think. So Leonardo's going to be my de facto leader, of course, but I'm going to each give them their own different special abilities, and to make them sort of unique. But that's going to be my league, 4 sidekick characters. And then, of course, they're going to take on, Shredder and all the other bad guys, Bebop and Rocksteady and stuff. With a scenario that I'm actually using from the core rulebook, but I'm going to change some of the abilities in there to make it a little bit more thematic to running a Ninja Turtle type game. When I keep saying I'm changing things, I'm not actually changing the rules of anything. What I'm simply doing is scratching off the names of some of the stuff in here to make it more thematic to the game at hand. So, for instance, I'm not actually changing the way the abilities work at all. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an ability, and let me just look one up for you here real quick, and I'll give you an example of what I'm going to talk about here. So let's say, for instance, let's do Two-Fisted, right? So Two-Fisted is a level 1 ability, And it reads simply add +1 die to 2 skill, or two, yeah, excuse me. Add a +1 die to 2 different skills and reduce your shoot to no dice. To make it a little bit more thematic, right, for Leonardo, because he is actually wielding 2 katanas, what I'm going to simply do is I'm going to use that same ability as written, but change it to 2 swords or dual katanas. I'm just simply changing the name to make it a little bit more thematic to the game at hand. I'm still going to add +1 to 2 different skills, and I'm going to reduce my shoot to no dice. So I might add one to brawl, and I might add one to, say, finesse. The idea that he's using the katanas to sort of, like, he's very agile when it comes to sort of defending himself. Or I can add it to dodge, right? So I'm going to add those +1 bonuses to 2 different skills, but it's exactly the same as it is in the book. I'm simply scratching off a name and renaming it to make it a little bit more thematic. The great thing about Pulp Alley is that the rules or the abilities in the books are very, for the most part, pretty generic. And all you need to do is simply scratch off the name and fill in something different in order to make the game a little bit more thematic to what you're headed towards. I hope this video has helped in some way. This is how I do superheroes. Like I said, it is possible to do characters like Superman by making them epic characters, but it becomes a little bit more difficult to run a game because you only have one character on your league. It can be fun, but it also can be a little bit more challenging in order to complete things like plot points or scenario objectives. Not gonna lie, having just a duo is a little bit tougher because, again, you still only have 2 characters, but you have a little bit more utility, right? You're now having a sidekick character who's acting more like a leader. It's almost like having 2 leader level characters. You have those extra abilities, you have a little bit more health, so you can withstand things a little more, but you have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to sort of interacting with the scenario itself. So I would say one of the big things is pick the heroes you want, or even create your own. I've done that myself. I've found miniatures, superhero-looking miniatures, and I thought, I'm just going to make my own character. And by using the abilities listed in the rule book, you're able to sort of pick out and make your own superheroes. And again, like I said, in order to make them feel more like superhero, that type of genre, simply scratch off the names of the abilities. Use the abilities as written, but give the names of those abilities something a little bit more flair that fits your scenario. And don't be afraid to lean into perks and associates. I've had so much fun running Batman and Robin as a duo team, adding in like one associate and then adding in an extra perk or something to be able to get a piece of gear. Also, I would highly recommend, if you have not already, adding in the vehicles. So if you can get a copy of the vehicles book from Pulp Alley, has a lot more depth and detail than what's in the core rule book. Man, it's so much fun just adding vehicles to a game. Even if the scenario doesn't call for it, even if you don't have sort of points to bring one into the scenario, just add it to the table. Let it just be a terrain piece that's interactable. Have a Batmobile available for Batman and Robin to sort of either arrive or to leave or jump into while they're there. Throw a motorcycle on the table. I've used police cars, army trucks. Another really fun thing is I played a solo scenario I had a couple of garbage trucks on the table in the city setting, and used one of the league's the characters jumped into the garbage truck and drove it forward in order to push everybody else out of the way so he could get to the plot point. He failed at that whole premise, getting out and trying to pass the plot point. Plot point actually beat him. The peril, I should say, for the plot point actually knocked him down. But it was just a cool cinematic moment, right? So don't be afraid to lean into some vehicles. Use some associates. I think the perks and associates are things that don't get quite utilized enough because it's less characters on the table. And it's sort of this background stuff that's going on sort of outside the sort of meta outside the game. but can really enhance your enjoyment of playing superheroes in Pulp Alley. Until next time, my friends, I am Questwise. Please stay safe out there in this crazy world. And as always, game on.